Hey guys, it is Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and we're going to make a character today. This is going to be my character for Season 2 of the Provokers. Now, here's the thing. I am going to take you through from zero and make this character. It's going to be very relaxed. And so the important thing to remember right up front, if you're tuning in, is there's going to be plenty of stuff that I don't remember or I don't know, and I'm fine with that. That's exactly why I have this. The 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. It's important to know that you don't have to remember all of this stuff. So I am going to walk you through. If I don't know something, I'm going to look it up. I've never made a druid before, so I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for anybody who wants to dig in, really try to put some of our D&D basics videos to use and start off just jumping right in and making a character. So the other thing to remember is that we are going to be kind of doing a lot of the mechanics and stuff. I have an idea of the character I want in my mind already, so that's going to make doing this a little easier. We will have a chat. I'm going to pop back and forth to the chat. It's going to be super relaxed. So let me do that now. Let's see who's hanging out with us today. We have Matt, a fistful of dice. He said he's prepping for his game today. Matt's running a beginner game, which is going to be sick. And so he's prepping for that and hanging out. Chad Nick from Gastro Gamer dropped dice from last night's stream. We did an amazing stream. He did all the work. I just talked a lot. It was Asian-inspired D&D, so check that out. Yeah, we got a few others. So we're going to start off. I'm going to be doing a lot of screen sharing, but one of the things to note is I'm taking you kind of from scratch because I thought this would be a useful video. One of the things James and I talk about when we do how-to videos, we try to find a really good balance of just starting out, because a lot of the how-to videos that I watch assume a basic level of knowledge about things, and I'm like, well, hold on, how did you do that one part? You said fill out my character sheet, but where do you get a character sheet? So I'm going to be doing a lot of screen sharing today. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my entire screen. All right, so this is what I'm looking at. Hey, there is a website. It's dnd.wizards.com. Now, what I did was I went up to the top bar and I said, form fillable, and you can even see, form fillable D&D character sheet, IV. That's all I typed. And then I hit enter, boom. Okay, so this is gonna bug me. I'm gonna close this. So right here, the first link, character sheets, Dungeons & Dragons, boom. So I come here to this page. Now, scrolling down a little bit, you've got a lot of options, so this can be confusing. There's the D&D Adventurer League, which is organized official play. I don't need that. There are starter set character sheets. Now, I don't need that either. I want to go to this first one here, 5th edition character sheets. Now, you see there's the really cool picture that's on the Player's Handbook cover. So I'm going to click this. And now I already saved it. But you're going to go ahead and I'm going to save this just right here. Now it saves. Now I have WinRAR. You can unzip this. So I hit show in folder. I'm going to extract this. Boom. Now, 5e character sheets. Now I'm going to double click this like this. There's a lot in here. You see there's character details, and then there's print versions and form fillables of a lot of these. I'm going to just go to a basic D&D 5e character sheet form fillable right here. So D&D _ 5e _ character sheet form fillable. I'm going to double click this right now. So boom, that's what we're looking at. So when I open up my screen, there are all these different blue boxes. That's where I can put information. Now, if you were watching our D&D basics video part 2, you know that this is what we call the tax form. This can look like a tax form. Now, I have good news for you. I'm going to take you through and basically just run through all the different pieces. that you're going to need to start actually playing the game. Now, I've got my player's handbook available, and so that is what we're going to do. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a second here, and we're going to hop back to late chat here. All right. So I want to give you a basic rundown of this character, what I'm doing, what I'm making. All right. So that you can kind of follow along with my train of thought and so on. I am playing a druid. Now, this is kind of a big deal for me because I've never played a druid, and I don't really connect with druids, not because I dislike them. They don't speak to me or inspire me often. So I thought this would be a really cool challenge to play a druid who in game kind of draw from that meta and say, what if I don't like my druidic heritage? What if I don't like my ancestry, my parentage? And I then have to rise to a challenge to become a druid due to some extenuating circumstances, some forces outside of my control. I'm pulled into the life path of having to be a druid. So I worked with Matt from A Fistful of Dice, and we talked about how that would look and the druids of the world. And this is really cool because we're inventing a lot of this as we go. So if you don't know what kind of character you want to make, that's fine too. But I feel like it gives me a little more of an idea of how to fill out that character sheet we talked about when I know for sure what I'm, basically like, because I have to assign in-game mechanics, ability scores and stuff from the book. I have to decide what I'm going to choose. And if I have an idea in my mind of what kind of character I'm going to be, that helps inform those mechanical choices. Let's check the chat here. Oh, Scott says, I always use the ones with the 3-page fillable. When you print, you can just specify not to print the spells page and such. So he's talking about the character sheet. There are all kinds of cool ones out there, and there's actually one that I like a lot, but I wanted to make sure to use one that you could definitely find and absolutely be able to download. Like if for whatever reason you can't find one of the cool variants, I didn't want you to be looking at a different one than what I was using. So making a character. Now, there is sort of a pillar, and it's one major thing that you need to have or prepare to do when you're making your character. And that, for me, is rolling your ability scores. Okay? So you can do this in any order you want, really. But I think the easiest way and the clearest way is to pick the things that, the numbers essentially, that are going to dictate how good I am at certain things in the world. Now, I already did this on a Hangout. We did what is called a Session 0. Session 0 is where you get together with the Game Master or the Dungeon Master and the other players, and you discuss what the campaign is going to be about. This is really, really important, especially if you've never played before, because what you're doing is you're managing everybody's expectations. If in my mind, I imagine that, the druid is going to be stopping people that are destroying the environment, and I see myself as sort of like this defender of nature using guerrilla tactics, but the campaign takes place in a city, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. So a Session 0 allows you to kind of discuss your character concept, give a vague outline to the other players. And what this also allows you to do is build in some light or loose connections so that you can start the game with a couple of points of reference. Now, you don't have to do it this way, but in my experience, it tends to go a little more smoothly. I found that without Session 0s, unless the Game Master and the players are a little more experienced, it can be easy for that first session to be a little more exploratory and act as a Session 0, which is also okay. But for my money, I'd say take 30 minutes, take an hour, sit down, have the Game Master say, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I want to do. And then, everyone kind of tells the Game Master, hey, well, here's what I'm thinking, I want to go this angle. Make sure you align everything and then go from there. So that's a session 0, just to kind of give you an idea what that is. But in our session 0, I already rolled my ability scores. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can decide ability scores. And the way that I like to do it, to add a little bit of randomness, is I like to roll D6s. I'm actually going to take this moment to show you a fistful of dice. So I always try to do it. And Matt, your logo, your arcane gauntlet, is so good at holding them without dropping them. And every time I want to do it, I don't show enough dice in a way. So I chose these dice. I like to buy different dice for my different characters. It's just a quirk. I like it. I like to use different dice for different players or different characters. So there are these sort of like granite, pearlescent marble gray with green. And I thought that that was kind of interesting, and it represented Christoph is my character's name. I thought it'd be cool because it's a little bit of green in what looks like concrete or city or earth or steel. So I like the idea of a little bit of green in all that gray. And so that is going to be the set of dice that I use. So the way that I like to roll my ability scores is I like to roll D6s and then take what you do is you roll 4 of them, 4 of these 6-sided dice. You take the 3 highest numbers and add them together. And you do that until you have a pool of enough to fill every one of your ability scores. So there are 6. Now, for the sake of just showing you how to do it, I'm going to give you one example, and then I'm going to plug in the ones that I already did. So I only have 1 D6 in this set, so I'm going to have to roll it 4 times and just remember. So, okay, that's bad news. That's a 1. It's already starting off kind of sour there. Okay, a 5. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking notes in my own Google chat so that I do not forget. So I've got a 1, a 5. Let's see what else we got. Ooh, a 6. These are good rolls. I like these dice. And a 2. So I rolled a 1, a 5, a 6, and a 2. I'm going to drop that 1. Okay. That means that if I add the 5 and the 6, that's 11 plus 2 is 13. So I now have a 13 to work with. I'm going to do that 6 more times if I'm making a character. Then I decide, of all those numbers I just rolled, where do I want to put them? Now, if you saw our D&D Basics video, part 2 goes into detail about the different ability scores that you have. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So let's visit the chat here. Drop Dice says, cool set. I love the sets like that have blue and silver and green and silver like those. So do I. These are just some good old-fashioned Chessex dice. You can check them out. You can pretty much get these at any gaming store. They also have scads of them in different web stores and stuff like that. BJ Hall says, when I don't know what I want to be anyhow and discover it, the stats tell me. But I agree with this way when I do know what I want to be for sure. That's a good point. He's saying you don't have to have an idea of who your character is. If you do that process I just mentioned, where you take these D6 and you roll them, if you come out with your 6 numbers, you can kind of say, okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm a weak character. I don't have a very high strength. So I'm going to put this 10 in my strength score. Now, the higher the better when it comes to ability scores. So, BJ, that's actually a really good point. Matt at Fistful of Dice says, I use different dice for each character as well. But when I roll stats, I always use my bone dice. Matt has this awesome set of bone dice. And I love that the organic bone is what you use for like the Genesis. You're like a demigod and you're rolling the stats. You're creating life from ash. Chad Nick says, I have a Joker colored one, purple and green over here. Nice. Oh man, and they're talking about there are different kinds of dice. I don't want to go off too far on a tangent because this is going to be, you could talk about dice all day. But Game Science is a brand of dice that are very sharp-edged. They don't machine them to paint the inside colors like this. So most die are painted using a machine that paints the inside colors. I don't know how the process works. I just know enough to be dangerous. But game science dice come with the inside blank. And so you essentially, you take a Sharpie and you write in your own paint or color. You can color them any color you want, and then you can wipe off the excess from the surface. So the cool thing about game science dice die, James has me all messed up from our last video. The cool thing about them is it feels so good to hold them in your hand and roll them because they're so angular and beautiful. And they use these muted colors. So I'm sure you can get them in all colors, but the ones that I saw of Matt's, and he has a cool picture. Actually, I think it's on his Facebook, The Fistful of Dice, or it could be on his YouTube, but the colors are beautiful. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. Matt did say he inked them himself, and sometimes he has to re-ink them because the color fades. You know, you're rolling them, etc. Other than that, he loves them. So, Lumi Joe says, cold pizza, a Provoker stream, and tea. Great prep atmosphere. Prep away. So, what do I want to do first? Like I said, I'm keeping this really casual because I had a couple of choices here. I thought, okay, let me do some pre-prep because I want to make sure there are no lulls in the stream and no pauses. And I thought, no, that's an inaccurate representation of what it's like to make a character sometimes because, you know, we're focusing a lot on helping people learn D&D in our latest videos. So I wanted you all to see, like, it's fine. It's, you know, there's a lot of flipping around. You forget stuff, and it can get bumpy or ugly. You know, you have to go back and redo things. That's fine. No worries there. So I'm going to pull up the stats that I already rolled to save just a little bit of time here. All right. Christoph Stormraven. So I just real quick, I have 20, 20, 20, 20, a 6, and a 20. No, I'm just kidding. I actually didn't roll too badly. Now, I want you to think about a coat rack. Okay? Think about a coat rack, and everybody starts with the same coat rack. And as we build this character, we're hanging different things on the hook to add onto this coat rack. So my bare bones character sheet, that's my coat rack. Everything I add is going to kind of give some sort of mechanical change or alteration to what I can do in the game. So boom, I'm going to hang what race I am on there. And the race is going to dictate certain things. I'm going to hang what class I am on there. And the class is going to dictate certain things. So you're going to see me kind of go through here. And the place I'm going to start, and I'm going to screen share here, I'm going to start right at the top and take you through some good old-fashioned character naming and age and height and weight. And I think you're going to be surprised how I handle this. Hold on one second here. Right. So, all right. So, this. Ba-bum. Is everybody having a good Saturday? Because mine's pretty great. So far, it's been relaxing. I've just been spending time with my daughter. Just been, you know, really just thinking about the game tomorrow. I'm so excited about the Provokers because I haven't played in a long time, and it's one of my favorite. No, it's my favorite game I've played in. And so, I don't know. I'm just super pumped about it. All right. So you're going to see here, I have a bunch of notes. See all these notes here? I have a bunch of notes on my character. So what I do is, and here go my stats. So I have a bunch of notes because as I think of something, I have a Google Doc here, and you'll see Christoph Stormraven is my character's name. I don't like to try to keep it on my phone or email it to myself because I drop pieces. Pieces tend to fall off. So if I do it this way, and I kind of have all this stuff, no spoilers, but it allows me, before I play tomorrow, I'm going to take about 20 minutes and I'm going to slowly just kind of read through those thoughts that I had just to steep myself in what inspired me about this character. So let's switch over to the character sheet. So the first thing here in the top left, super basic. I can name my character whatever I want. So I'm going to go Christoph. I think I'm going to go PH. Wait. Whoa, buddy. I think I'm going to go PH. A couple people suggested I go FF. I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat? Should I go Christoph PH or Christoph with an FF? Let's see here. Oh, yeah, this is a good point. We started at level 3 last time in the Provokers. So this is different because we're starting at level 1, and I'm pretty excited about that. For now, I'm going PH, and I can always change it. That's something else that's super important is you could change the spelling of your character's name in the middle of the campaign. That's how I think anyway. Some people disagree with that, but I'm very much about building the story that's best by the end. And retconning stuff, retroactive continuity. So anyway, Christoph Storm Raven. Now, you're going to see that I have a class and a level, a background, a player name, all this stuff. The first thing is I'm just going to put in here, I'm a druid, and I'm level 1. Now, my background, I don't know that yet. I'm going to skip it. Player name, Tim. I'll do Brandis. No. No. Tim. I'm going to leave these things blank because I haven't decided on those things. And that's another thing. Looking at a character sheet like this, there is so much. And that's why we said it's like a tax form. It's like, well, oh my God, where do I start? So the first thing that I've done, just put a name. And listen, if you haven't decided on your name, just put whatever. This is a work in progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't obsess over it. Boom. So I'm going to stop sharing here because now I want to take you to the player's handbook. This is the D&D 5th edition player's handbook. This is where all the information is that I'm going to be, pulling from to make this character. Remember when I said it's like a coat rack? The first thing that I want to do, and this is just me, I've already chosen what class I'm going to play. Okay? Now, the reason why that's important is because certain classes are better at things than others. So the classes are balanced, and they're created to give your character a unique role in the game as far as what they're really good at, and give them a very unique flair and flavor as to how they can interact with the world. So there are certain abilities that are going to do better depending on what class you choose. Now, I'm a heavy role player. I'm heavy on story. So some people might say, well, you shouldn't decide that. That's power gaming. I like being good at things in the game. I like having the choice of being able to do the things that I'm good at, or role play and say, no, I wouldn't be good at that right now. So I've decided that I'm playing a druid. So I already know this, but if you flip through the book, it's the first part. It's called Classes. The druid is on page 64 of the player's handbook. And you're going to see, again, this looks kind of daunting. There's this huge table, and it looks like, well, what is all this? What are all those numbers? This, in the book, is a really far, zoomed out view of everything you get over 20 levels. So for me today, I don't have to worry about this first part. This is going to go super fast because as I level, I have to worry about these things. So this is the entire progression of what I would do. Now, if you'll notice, there's a cool description of the druid. There's a lot of flavor text that can kind of give you an idea of what their role is, that the role that I was telling you about before in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, on page 65, there is something called a quick build, okay? The quick build is giving you those ability scores we talked about that are going to suit the druid's strength best. Strength is probably not the best word. Suit the druids things they're good at best. I talk good. So the quick build says this. You can make a druid quickly by following these suggestions. First, wisdom should be your highest ability score. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the screen share here. According to the book, wisdom should be my highest ability score because wisdom in this particular class is what a lot of my abilities are going to be tied to. So let me screen share again. And burp. So I'm going to switch back to my Google Doc here. So of these, it's like, all right, what do I want to do here? I am going to take this 16. Now, hold on just a second. I took my coat rack and I hung the class on there because I knew that I was going to be a druid. But there's something else that comes into play here. There's something else that you should decide, and you can decide how you want to do this. But something that can alter those ability scores I rolled, something that can augment them and add to them, is the race that I choose. Now, for me, I often choose my class first. In the book, they walk you through and they say, you know, choose your race first, which is fine. That's totally fine. But I knew I was going to be a druid. I haven't fully decided on what race I'm going to be. So, oh, that's a bummer. My player's handbook started falling apart. That's a bummer. Oh, well. Ah, well. So, the races are, it's like they're genetically good at certain things. So, races have certain bonuses to their ability scores naturally, right? So a dwarf is probably going to be stronger than, say, an elf. But an elf is probably going to be able to move quicker and have higher dexterity. So one of the things that I like to do is figure out what class I'm going to play, in this case, druid. Then I like to think, okay, what sort of race am I going to do? Now, I could easily have just flipped that around. You could say, I want to just be a human, or I want to be a half-orc. And that's totally fine. The key is to make it. No, the key is that, for me anyway, these ability scores come into play and they're important, but I'm not looking to do what's called optimize this character. I'm not looking to make the best mechanical character I can to get the most advantages. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. This stream is totally not about that. But what I'm really looking to do is make a character that I'm interested in, that I'll have fun using the mechanics of. Because I can come up with a cool concept all day. I'm like, yeah, I'm this fish out of water. I'm on this quest. I've got these things to do. But if I don't like what my character can do in game to sort of try to overcome the challenges put before me by the game master or the dungeon master, it can become boring. This is why I chose a druid, because I think that, especially after talking to Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice last night, I think my perception of the druid has been all wrong. I think that I have not been giving the druid the credit that it deserves. Let's check the chat and see who agrees and disagrees. Chad says he's going to get a snack. Lumi Joe says, if Christoph dies, I want him hung by his neck on a coat rack. I think we could arrange that. Jason Limpel says, running a little late. Has race and path been picked? So I'm actually just digging into the race that I'm going to use. And I chose class first because I thought that would be interesting. I thought that would be an interesting kind of way to do it. Now, hopefully that's not confusing. But if you go to like the early 20s of the pages in the player's handbook, that's where you're going to find your races. So it actually starts on page 17 with a basic description. So I love that there's also a sort of brief rundown of what each race is like when you flip through. Okay, so I want to choose a race that would fit my backstory. So I want to be a sort of fish out of water, someone who isn't comfortable with his lineage, someone who doesn't necessarily fit in with his family. So I've got the option of using a dwarf, but they strike me as being very kindred, very tightly woven to their family. There's elves. There's all different choices here. But one thing in particular caught my eye. And it's, if you flip through past all of the main sort of common races, you get into some of the more uncommon races. Now, I think I'm going to be what's called a half-elf. This is also what many would consider to be a trope, meaning it's a common thing to have a half-elf who sort of comes from two worlds and not knowing exactly where they belong. That's okay. It's fun to play tropes. It's fun to play tropes because you can adopt most of what makes them awesome and then turn a couple of dials to make them something entirely different altogether. Yeah, Chris Wilhelm says, welcome to the Broken Players Handbook Club. That's a really big bummer because I thought that I had dodged the bullet. Everyone had been talking about their players' handbook breaking and all that. And I was like, dude, mine's stayed strong. In fact, man, I hate to do this to you, Wizards. This is the second player's handbook that I purchased. And I wrote myself a little note in this second one. It says, replacement book, 221.15. Original bought on 8/8/14, but the binding broke. You know why? Because in 10 years, when I find this book and look through it, I'll be like, oh, man. I leave myself little notes like that. So back to choosing the race. This race that I'm going to hang on the coat rack to augment my abilities and to kind of give me some ideas of what my parentage might be and, you know, maybe even my name. Like the book has ideas for different traits, names, things like that. But there's a blurb here on page 39 that tells me sort of this hot sheet of all the mechanics that go along with being a half-elf. So the first part here says size. Now I'm going to go back to the screen share. Yep. All right, so what the heck? Where am I? There's a lot going on here. So by the end of this, I don't know if I'm going to fill all this out, but we'll get close. You know what? I don't see size on here. I don't see size on the character sheet. I guess it's assumed that all characters are medium unless otherwise stated. Help me in the chat if I'm just missing it, if I'm blindly missing size. But yeah, so I am a medium creature. Now, my speed. Now, I'm going to pause here and tell you. Notice how I'm just taking stuff out of the book. Like, I don't have this stuff memorized. I don't know what the speed of a half-elf is versus a dwarf versus a halfling. I have a good idea, but that's why I'm using the book on page 39. So if you have to feel like, man, I keep having to go into the book, listen, you and I, we're in the same boat. So my speed, what I'm going to do here is just type this in. So my base walking speed is 30 feet, so I just put in 30. Boom. Now, I'm a serial saver. So you're going to see that I save a lot. So I'm going to hit File, Save As. In the same folder right here, I'm just going to say Christoph, Stormraven. I'm typing one-handed holding my player's handbook. Stormraven. And I'm this guy too. 01. I put an O here because if you just put 1, if you happen to make 10 of something, the 10 will go before the 1. So I've saved it. Now, just working down the list here, it says that I have dark vision. So thanks to my elven blood, I have superior vision in dark conditions. Okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Where do I put that? There's no spot specifically for dark vision. Aha. Features and traits. So over here on the bottom right of this character sheet are the notes that I'm going to make for myself as a player so that when the game master asks me something, I can kind of glance at that and see if I have any tools in my toolbox to meet the challenge that the dungeon master is throwing at me. So for this, I'm just going to put dark vision 60 feet. Now, I'll remember when I look at dark vision that basically I can see in darkness as though it were dim light. And this is just in the rules. It even says it here in that section. You can't discern color. It's basically everything is shades of gray. So a lot like if you ever played any of the Aliens versus Predator games, it's like a dialed in version of the alien vision. So again, I'm going to save. Well, actually, hold on. Click off here. Why doesn't it let me save? There we go. I have to click off the field. All right. So the next thing is just working down this page, page 39. I have Fey ancestry. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I have, because of my ancestors, it's difficult to put me to sleep. So I have advantage on something called saving throws against being charmed or magic that puts me to sleep. So I'm going to put Fey ancestry. Now, here's something important about this section. I'm not going to try to write all of that in here. This is just a hot sheet for me to have basic idea of what I need to remember. So for me, I'm going to say advantage on saves against sleep magic. Hey, that's not how you spell against. Don't you love living in 2016 where you can just right-click a word like a lazy person and fix it? So now, and charmed. Advantage on saves against sleep magic and charms. Now, the other thing that's cool about these form fillable sheets is the more I type, this is going to auto size and get smaller. Let me click out of here and save it. And let's check on the chat. All right. Matt says his Pathfinder core book is in rough shape. But is the binding still intact? It has become a soft cover. Never mind. Mocklizer says, Tim, I'm pretty sure with Fey ancestry, you're immune to sleep magic. Let me see here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. You have advantage against saving throws, against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. So, yeah, I'm actually wrong. That's actually a really good point. So, advantage on saves against sleep magic is wrong. It's advantage on saves against being charmed. Can't be put to sleep. Great catch. And I'm sure there are going to be other things that I do that have the same effect. There are spells as a paladin that I used in Provokers Season 1 that I realize have a longer casting time than instant. And I cast those spells instantly at least twice. So it's one of those things where you'll figure that stuff out as you go along. And thankfully, I've got people who are smarter than me in the chat helping me out. Jason Lapel says, I ran a hill dwarf druid that was an outlander, and that's a background, that worshipped a boar goddess that came to him giving him a tusk in a dwarven rune for home. Unknown to him, that orc and dwarf and I lost you there. Unknown to him, that orc and dwarf and orcs, which she is. Sorry. Matt says he's off to run a beginner game. Have a great one. Hope to see some of you at the Provokers tomorrow. Don't forget, Provokers premieres tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on a Fistful of Dice's channel. So the next thing I'm going to do is fill out what I call, well, I don't call it, the book calls it skill versatility. I'm going to screen share again here. So back to the character sheet. So the next thing on my page here on page 39 says, skill versatility. You gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. All right. Now, what are skills? Well, they're over here. This whole section are skills. So I gain proficiency. It means I'm going to be better than average in 2 skills of my choice. Now, I don't want to choose those just yet. So what I'm going to do here in the bottom right, so that I remember, anything that I need to go back and do later, I'm going to go is going to go in this little section underneath these stars. So what I'm going to put is skill versatility. 2 skills proficient at. So I'm going to be proficient in 2 skills. Now, I don't know what they are yet, so I'm just going to put that under this little ... so that I'll know that at any point, if I want to add those things to the character sheet where it makes sense, I just go there, boom, and then what I'll do is take it from under the stars and put it over the stars. That's how I know, so I can still continue to work down the sheet without having to stop and then do all my skills first so that I can add these 2. I think that's another thing. It's a lot of drops in buckets. Making a character for D&D 5th edition is a fairly simple process, but it's like spread out. So it's like putting a lot of drops in buckets. Like I could have easily gotten sidetracked and then tried to fill out all these skills. But to fill out all these skills, I need to fill out these ability scores. And then these ability scores give me a number down here that I can put in. So it becomes difficult to know where to start. That's why I'm kind of just starting with the race here. Now, I also get an additional language. So I'm going to say languages. What it tells me is I can speak, read, and write Common, which is the common language. So I'm going to write Common. I can also speak Elvish. And then 1 additional language of my choice. Now, I don't know what language that's going to be, so I'm going to put it under here again. 1 additional language. So I know that later on, boom, I can come and add that. So one of the main things, and I'm going to put my languages down here when I'm done. But one of the main things in creating a character like this is being able to jump through the book and, you know, be able to jump around, fill a little here, a little there. That's why this is the first time I'm trying a character sheet that is digital. I have always used paper. I've been a big fan of paper and using paper character sheets, but this is the first time I'm using digital because what you can do is hop in, do this little bit, save it. I suggest saving it to the Google Drive because then it's anywhere. You can work on it virtually on any computer because most computers have some sort of Adobe Reader. And you can work on it piece by piece. If you don't have an hour or 2 hours to try to learn this stuff, hop in. You can come back and forth and watch this video and just kind of save it as you go. So there are some pretty important traits that I wanted to save for last. On the bottom left of page 39, what you're going to see here is the half-elf traits that I was talking about. There's an ability score increase. It tells me their age and their alignment. Now, the one that's going to tie into the mechanics the most is the ability score increase. Like I was telling you, each one of the races gets an ability score increase. Now, for a half-elf, my charisma score increases by 2, and 2 other ability scores increase by 1. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my sheet here. And I don't know what these are going to be. Remember, these are the ones that I rolled. These are my ability scores. I kind of got to put these somewhere. Now, depending on what kind of character I want to be, I'm going to use the same kind of process here under the stars here. I know I have 2 points that are going to go to my charisma. I've got 1 point and 1 point I can put anywhere. Okay? Now, the reason why that's important is because, and this is where the hopping around comes into play, going back to the Druid page, remember, it was telling me clearly what the Druid is good at and what the Druid needs as far as being really good at the abilities and skills that are tied to the Druidic nature. So it tells me in the quick build, this is on page 65 again, it says you can make a Druid quickly by following these suggestions. First, a wisdom should be your highest ability score. followed by Constitution. Second, choose the Hermit background. Now, we're not going to get into backgrounds just yet. But if it tells me that Wisdom should be highest, followed by Constitution, again, these are just suggestions of tropes. Remember we were talking about tropes and kind of the basics. These are just suggestions. So if my Wisdom should be highest, I'm probably going to take this 16. And I'm going to take this 1 that I can put anywhere. I'm going to add it here. Now, because I'm a half elf, that's 17. Because I rolled a 16, and the traits of the half elf say that I can put 2 points anywhere in ability scores. Well, one of them is going to be here, and 17 is what I get. So I'm going to jump over here, and my Wisdom is going to be a 17. So that's how you get that number. I rolled the abilities. I looked up my race. My race gave me some points to add to this, and boom went the dynamite. That's how I get my 17. Now, the other one it says is that followed by Constitution. So Constitution should be my next highest score according to what they say. Now, if that's the case, the next highest number I have is 14. So I'm going to take this other 1 that I can put anywhere. Right? And what I'm going to do is now I end up with a 15. Okay? So that is going to go into my Constitution because the book suggests that I take and put a 15 here. Okay? So I have 2 other points that go into charisma. So I'm not going to fill that out quite yet, but I do want to kind of look and say, okay, what are the rest of my stats going to be? What do I want to do, and what do I want to kind of put in there? Now, what I'm going to do is go to the chat, and I want suggestions from anyone watching. What do you think I should do, and what do you think I should put the rest of my abilities in? I'm a goofball. That whole time I thought that I was sharing the screen. I'm going to share what you were supposed to be seeing that whole time. Was this. I was doing all this. So I took and had these under here and then added them so that I got my 17 and my 15. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing without screen sharing. So tell me what you think I should do with the rest of these ability scores. I have an 11, a 10, a 12, and a 9. Now, 2 is going to automatically be added to my charisma. So what I want to do is let's work our way down the character sheet. Let's make it easy. What should my strength be? Which of these ability scores, okay, because I have these left, which of these ability scores should I make my strength? Tell me, sweet chat. So let's see here. We've got some good points here. 14 to 15 doesn't change the modifier, so you're investing in level increase. Now here we're talking about mechanics. As you advance in the game, you get to add points to these ability scores, which represents you getting better as an adventurer. So you get to add those things, and they give you points every so many levels to say, you know what? Put some more points there so that you can get better. For me, I don't think I'm going to be very strong. I think I'm going to be strong enough. Increase your font size. It's hard to read. Huh. That's weird. Me? I'm zoomed into 174%. That's weird. Let me zoom in more. Let's do 250. Let me know if that's better for you there. I think that was directed at me. Oh, in the Google Doc. That makes way more sense, Chris. Thank you. What a nice man. What a nice man to help me. So my 14 that I rolled I took one of them from being a half elf. I made it a 15. I put that in my constitution because it said it should be my second highest. My 16 that I rolled, I got a +1 from being a half elf that I could put anywhere, which made it a 17. And I put that into my wisdom because that's what it said. So what I have left is an 11, a 10, yay, a 12, and a 9. I will automatically get to add 2 to my charisma. So what are we thinking? What kind of weapons are you thinking of having him use? I don't know. I don't know yet. I was thinking maybe more dexterity. So yeah, we have some, so dexterity 12. If we have some suggestions where it says if you're going to take the +1, add the +1 to your 11 and 9, that would change your modifiers. That's true. I could do that. I don't know if I want to get, I think what I'll do, because I want him to not be great at some stuff at first. So these lower scores kind of represent that. So that's true. And that's very smart. If you, because these numbers here that we're looking at, this +1, that makes this a 17. The final number that you come out with that you put here, you get to add bonuses that you put here. So a 15 and a 17 are going to have numbers that they add under here. He's saying because there's a threshold to when this number changes, you increase this number. If you wanted to do that, that's actually really smart. I'm probably going to not do that particular thing, though. Dexterity and intelligence should have good scores. So, okay, great. So we've got a couple suggestions in the chat. I think we're on the right path here. Chris says, that to me is the best question. Who are his elf parents? I can't reveal that because it's sort of a secret that his character has. So his parentage is a bit of a secret. His father was an elf. We'll say that. His mother was not. So, so we have some suggestions here. Throw the low stat and strength. 11 strength, 12 dex, 9 charisma, and 10 intelligence. I can honestly say this is the direction I was thinking of heading. Dexterity and intelligence should have good scores. Molkaiser says, there's something about the name Christoph that makes me think that he's more intelligent than the average person. All right, so I think we're going to start here because this is the neighborhood I was thinking of anyway. So I'm going to copy and paste this right into my doc. All right. So 11 strength, 12 dex, 9 charisma, 10 intelligence. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this 9, and this is where I'm going to add my charisma. So I know that I get to add this and make that an 11. So since I get a +2 to my charisma being a half elf, this 9 becomes an 11, but I have to put it in my charisma because it's a +2 to charisma. So now I have an 11 in my charisma. All right. So we're making these ability scores. Now, let's hop back here to the doc. So I still have the 12, the 10, and the 11. So put the 12 into my dexterity, and that's my ability to, move and maneuver. I'm going to go ahead and put, I'm unbolding the ones I'm using. I'm going to put a 10 in my intelligence. You know what? I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to put 11 intelligence because I do think he should be a little smarter. All right? And that leaves me with my 10, which I have to put in my strength. That's it. So now I have a basic understanding that because these numbers can go from 0 to 20, 20 being the absolute highest that a human can achieve under normal circumstances. Well, I say human. A player character can achieve under normal circumstances. So a 10 is middle of the road. I'm not weak, but I'm not strong. I'm just average. Dexterity, a little higher than average. My constitution is relatively high if 20 is the max. My intelligence, about normal, about average. My wisdom, very high. I'm very wise because out of 20, I have a 17. So that means that I'm very good at perceiving the world around me, seeing things, noticing things, stuff like that. And my charisma is an 11. So my ability to, my perceived persona and how I'm able to intimidate people or maybe persuade them or perform things like that. All right, let's go back to the chat. I'm going to save this here. Well, I already did. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Go back here. All right. So we have the character's ability scores at this point. Oh, Chris says, I mean to say that by his father's subrace, you could play to the tropes of that subrace. For example, Shadevale elves are strong. So I don't want to get too complex, but each one of the races that you can choose, for the most part, has sub-races that give other abilities. So what Chris is saying is if my father was a certain kind of elf, then it would give me, as a child of my father, certain traits that are inherently born into there. And that's actually brilliant. I have seen this before where, it was a homebrew where you had to choose what kind of half-elf you were. Were you more human or more elven? And I thought that that was really clever. And we might incorporate something like that into Dragon Grid, where you get to choose, you know, and by choosing which half you were, more, you were able to choose a different sort of trait to match it. So that was clever. All right. Steven says, I forgot to eat breakfast. You're messing up my nutrient timing. Yeah, man. So, Christoph Walt's voice for Christoph. Chad, I'm not going to do an accent for Christoph. I've decided that I'm probably not going to do an accent because I usually do accents. But, so good call, but I'm not going to do an accent, I don't think. Oh, Chris dropped. I said the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide has something like that as an option regarding the elves. That might be where I heard about it. I think maybe Marquise was telling me about it. All right. So I'm going to go back to my screen share here, and let's jump back in and see how much more we can do before my daughter wakes up from her nap. It's going to be frustrating for if I don't get to finish. People are going to be like, no, you left me hanging. If I don't finish, I'll do a part 2 explaining what I did. All right. So we're going to go back to the character sheet here. So there's still a lot of blank stuff. There's still a lot of stuff that's like, well, what do I do here? There's a lot going on. To me, I think the next thing to talk about is those ability scores and how they factor in to the way that I'm going to interact with the world. Okay? So as we've been talking about, it's like we're talking about modifiers, and that's something that we keep saying. So we're going to go over what that means and how you figure out the modifiers. Okay? So the way to think of this is the modifiers are the quantifiable way that make this 15 better than this 11. Because right now, that's just an abstract concept. It's like, yeah, on a 1 to 10 scale, how good are you? You know, and in this case, it's like on a 1 to 20 scale. But how does that factor into the game? How do you actually use these numbers? Well, these numbers give you a specific bonus. Now, I want to talk about something called bounded accuracy. Bounded accuracy. What this means is that D&D 5th edition uses a system that keeps a lot of these numbers relative even when you get to really high levels. So there's something called power creep or system bloat, where when you're dealing with numbers and stats and modifiers like this, when you level and get higher and higher level, it's easy for a game system, a different RPG rule sets, to have to keep adding to these numbers so that a character at level 20 is more powerful than a character at level 1. But the Dungeons and Dragons system uses something called bounded accuracy, which allows for the level 20 person to still be really strong, but they could still theoretically get hurt if enough level 3s or 5s or 10s came after them. So it's a really cool system. The reason why I mention that is because everything is going to be, like I said, the highest this can go is 20 for a player character. And so the way that this is decided is with pluses. So when you hear somebody say +3, +4, +2, they're typically adding this plus that's under here. Okay. So here is how you figure out these modifiers. How do I know what a 12 gives me? What number do I hear? Plus what? Well, the rules are in 5th edition D&D. If you don't want to have to look at a table or look up a chart or a graph or anything like that, subtract 10 from this number. And this is going to sound like harder than it is, but really just subtract 10 from the number and then divide it by 2. Okay? So if you subtract 10 from the number and divide it by 2, I know that this is going to give me a +1. Now, you don't have to memorize all that. Most people just use the chart on page 13. It's just that, and you start to memorize it. So a 12 ability score gives me a +1. Why? That's just the way the math works out. There's no, it's like learning music. Why is it a G chord? Because that's what somebody called it. That's just the way that it works. That's the tones and pitch. So in the same way, why does a 12 equal a +1? Because that's the way the mechanics work out. That's the way the system is built. So forever, in 5th edition, when you put a 12 here, it's always going to be +1. Okay? Now, to further confuse things, this and this are correlated. But this number down here, so filling out this ability modifier, it doesn't change every single time I change this number because of the math we talked about. Now, in D&D, 5th edition, there's something that you need to remember, and it's a very basic rule. And if you're doing math, which is kind of, it's not as common in 5th edition to have to do a bunch of math, but you always round down. You round down. Down to downtown, Julie Brown, down. I'm trying to make you remember this. Round down, clown. I'm just giving you mnemonic devices. Because if you divide a number in the game, if you end up with a fraction, you round down, even if the fraction, and this is the key, even if it's 0.5 or more. If you divide something, which is rare, you have to do all this math. But if you divide something and the number is 1.9, in 5th edition D&D, that number is a 1. Now, because of this, when I'm doing all this math, when I'm figuring out all my ability scores, and I'm going through and figuring out, you know, what pluses I get, a 12 and a 13 are going to be very similar, right? Because of the way that the math shakes out. So I'm going back to the chart here because I don't like doing the math, and I tend to remember them, but I usually mix up some of them. All right, so a 10 is a +0. So I don't get any bonuses to this 10. My dexterity is a 12. That's a +1. Constitution is a 15. So looking at the chart on page 13, I get a +2. My intelligence is an 11. So remember, a 10 and an 11, I get +0. My wisdom is a 17. This is my heavy hitter. So boom, I get +3. Okay. Now my charisma is an 11. So again, +0. So I am not getting a lot of pluses on my strength. Well, no pluses on my strength, intelligence, or charisma. But that is how you figure out this big number here and how it ties to this little number here. Now let's go to the chat to see what I got wrong. Because this chat is smarter than me, and I'm glad for it. You round up for the remarkable athlete feature for the champion fighter, which is super confusing. That is the exception. I think there's one other one. Drop Dice says, I'm not famous, just a guy who likes to help the community and discuss things. LOL. I guess the YouTube thing helps. You're famous in my book, baby boy. Unless otherwise noted, Tim, some class skills tell you to round up for certain roles. So let me put it this way. The general rule is to round down. Round down, round down. Unless it says not to, which that's confusing. But the general rule, overall, it's like, okay, we round down. Oh, it says not to. So you're exactly right on that. But 8 out of 10 cases, you're going to round down. Which is another thing where it's like, in D&D, it's just about steeping yourself in it and learning it. So let's see here. Yeah, the mod in the big, so this is what Steve Fillmore says. The modifier, or the stat number in the big box and the stat in the small box, since you referenced the mod way more than the normal way. Meaning, he's not wrong. It's funny. The numbers I rolled at the beginning, you rarely reference them. I mostly am going to use those pluses I put underneath them, which is kind of interesting. Because you roll a number to get a number, and then that informs some of the other things. All right, so let's creep right along here. I've got my racial stuff filled out. Now I still have some skills to do. And so I think that's what I want to do next. In Dungeons and Dragons, the way that the skills work is that you get an opportunity to fill in all of these, and I'm going to go back to screen sharing. Let me check the chat one more time. Make sure that there's no delay and that I didn't miss anything big. Can flying forms be used at low levels if they don't fly? If you're talking about a druid, no. It says that in the druid wild shape box. It basically says, and in the druid section where you can change shapes, it tells you you can use this, but you can't fly, or you can use this, but you can't swim, you know, that kind of thing. And as you level up, you're allowed to access that. So, all right, now we have to do our skills, right? So our skills are another big way that we interact with the world. Now, again, this can seem really, really daunting, I think. So here we have, let's see here. Sorry. I was just, my book is literally falling apart in my hands. So I'm trying to save it by not putting too much weight. I'm holding it with one hand. And every time it sort of leans on the heavy side, I can hear it going. And I'm like, no, mama, no. So all these skills here. What the heck? This seems like a lot of work. Nah, it's actually super easy. The first thing I'm going to do is take this number over here and plug it in over here. Well, how? Well, see where it says Constitution? Right. Oh, that's going to bother me. See where it says Constitution? I look over here. Do any of these say con? They don't. That's why I chose to show you Constitution first. There are no skills associated with it. Now, everything else, if I look at strength. Strength. All right. So my athletic skill automatically is a +0 because I am a +0 at strength. So I'm going to do all of the ones that say strength because I know I'm going to take my +0 and add it anywhere it says strength because that represents my inherent basic ability to do that. Now, I know that strength doesn't have another one either. Athletics is the only one that uses strength. So, dexterity. So, I know that I have a +1 dexterity. What does that mean? Well, that means that inherently, if I roll a die, I get to add +1 to acrobatics because I'm good at dexterity, at least better than average. So, I get a +1. So, let's keep riding down here. So I'm looking over here on the right to these in the parentheses, and there's another dexterity. So I get to add my +1. You see how this pattern goes? You're going to continue to do this until you're done. So I know that there are none with Constitution. Now I go to Intelligence. Easy. I have a +0. So I have to work my way down. Arcana. So it's a +0. History. This means that when I roll, and the most common die that's rolled for these sorts of things is a D20. It's the sort of big, roundish, angular, 20-sided dice. And that means that, like, when I roll this D20, so I just rolled a 17. I'm like, if the Dungeon Master says, give me an Arcana skill check, how good you are at Arcana, I don't get to add anything to that because I'm not skilled in that. But I'm very wise. So if it was a wisdom skill, I'd get to add +3, as will be filled in here. So let's go ahead and finish doing the rest of my intelligence. So intelligence +0 to my investigation, +0 to nature, which I think is so fitting because I don't really know. I'm a druid who's left my family. I don't really know what's going on. All right, so save it. All right, working down. Now wisdom. Now this is my +3. So we're in good shape here. So animal handling, I'm good at that. Insight, I'm good at that. Medicine. See, I'm just taking the +3 from right here and I'm putting it right over here. Perception, +3. And survival. All right, so we got one more left. I've got charisma. Again, pretty easy, +0. So +0, +0, +0, +0. Oh, I missed a dex. Oh, +1. So here, see, dex, I missed it. So I come up here to dex. It's a +1. So +1. And save. All right, let's check the chat. All right. Okay, so they're talking about, I'm a druid, and we haven't gotten into this yet, but one of the things that a druid can do is use something called wild shape, where they turn into different animals. And so they're talking about how the mechanics work, where a druid can turn into a certain animal and what you're allowed to do when you turn into that animal. And all those rules are in the class, kind of talking about that. So let's see here. Any questions? Anything that you want to have me work on in particular that I haven't yet? Because the next thing we're going to talk about is we just filled in all our skills, which are dictated by those ability scores. Okay, so we rolled our scores, we added our race to augment those scores. Boom, that gave us our bonuses. Now we take our bonuses and plug that in to see what we're good at naturally. I'm naturally good at animal handling. I'm naturally good at being insightful. I'm naturally good at medicine. Those are skills. Now, I am going to talk about starting to add the actual class of druid. Now, I'm going to screen share again. We're going to get into, because this is based on, I've got all of these skills I filled out. I've got all this here. But what are these dots? What does this mean? And over here, where it says I have skill versatility, remember this under my stars, where it says I'm 2 skills that I'm proficient in? What does that mean? Does that mean I have a +3, so I'm proficient? What does that mean? What is this? Aha. So let's flip back to the druid. I'm going to talk to you about the proficiency bonus. Okay. Now, remember when I was talking about bounded accuracy and Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition? Okay. I'm going to look up the exact definition of what they say proficiency bonus is. Oh, perfect. Let's go to Stack Exchange. This is a really good resource. If I say anything that you don't know, is boom, click on this. Now look, can someone explain what the proficiency bonus in D&D 5e or next is? I'm reading the rules. I keep seeing this. What is it? What is it? What is it? Proficiency bonus is noted in your character advancement table as proficiency bonus. It's universal for character level. Okay? What this means is that your proficiency bonus is tied to that thing I was talking about called bounded accuracy. It's the thing that makes, it's a rolling modifier of plus something that you add to the things you're good at overall. This lets everyone stay on a same general level, but allows others to excel at certain things. So how do I know what my proficiency bonus is? Well, check this out. On this table, back in the Druid section, page 65, this, remember the big, scary table that I showed you before that looked like, it was like, what is all this? What is all this? it lists out right here on the left-hand side. It says level, and it has the level number. Then it has something called a proficiency bonus. Now, here's the good thing about a proficiency bonus. It is the same no matter what race, class, or anything else. Your proficiency bonus is the exact same for every character. That is what keeps a lot of the game balanced, adding all those things onto our coat rack. Everyone is going to be progressing with the same proficiency bonus. So it's as simple as me looking up and saying, okay, what's my proficiency bonus? I look on this table, it's a +2. Why is it a +2? Again, it's just that arbitrary number that the game designers chose to balance out the probability, and when you're rolling the dice, and through a lot of play testing, a very big play test with thousands and thousands of people involved, they figured out that the proficiency bonus of +2 allows it to, that's the number that seems the most balanced at that level. Here's what the proficiency bonus lets happen. Instead of having to remember all these different pluses and minuses, you just get a chance to come across the board and go through and add pluses to the things that you're proficient in. Okay, so now my proficiency bonus, I just looked it up. Remember, like I said, is +2. Okay, so yeah. So I know that as far as this and talking about skill proficiencies, anytime we're talking about a proficiency bonus, we're talking about adding this +2 to what I can do. Okay? Now, remember, the proficiency bonus is also what I'm good at. So it's going to be, and this is kind of tricky, the things that I'm proficient in, I get to add that +2. So here, let me do the screen sharing again. Right-o. So, saving throws. See these dots? I'm going to be proficient in a saving throw. Well, what's a saving throw? Well, if something drastic and sudden happens, and I have just enough time for my instincts to respond, that's called a saving throw. It's like, oh my God, jump out of the way. What do I get to do? Well, the first thing I get to do is fill in all of these from here. So if I have something collapse on my head and I have to try to catch it and push it up, well, I better roll well because I get a +0. For dexterity, I get a +1. For constitution, and see, I'm just pulling these numbers right here. For constitution, I get a +2. Intelligence, +0. Intelligence saving throws are usually for the magic we were talking about. Things like perceiving if something is an illusion, stuff like that. Now, you wouldn't necessarily need a saving throw for that, but I'm just letting you know, intelligence saving throws are often magical or charm related. Wisdom is +3, so hallelujah on that angle. And then charisma, +0. Now, certain classes, because remember, the proficiency bonus is on my class progression table on page 65. All right? So that means that it's tied to my class. So certain classes are better at certain things than others. So on page 65, it tells me what I'm proficient in. And one of those columns says, hey, Druid, you're proficient in the saving throws of intelligence. I get to fill that bubble, and wisdom. So when I'm filling out my character sheet, these dots here, that means I'm proficient. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means since I'm proficient in that, I get to add this +2. So now, instead of this being a +0 from here, it is a +2. It's wisdom. Instead of being a +3 from here, I get to make it a +5 because I'm pulling in this 2 from up here. There you go. And that's how I figure out my proficiency bonus for my saving throws. All right. Let's jump back to the chat. All right, guys, what am I doing wrong? There's a lot of really good stuff going on in the chat. Folks are so smart and mechanical. Someone says, ooh, this half-elf would benefit from riding a chicken. Someone said, choose your background first. I didn't think that would be intuitive to the character creation, but that's not a bad idea. It says, quick, give examples of each kind of saving throw. Oh, no, I'm bad at that. I'm not terrible at it, but ooh. Steven says, you're doing great, Tim. Thanks, man. Good point, Drow All right, guys. So there's still more stuff we have to fill in regarding what our druid can do. Like I was, and I'll screen share again. There are more bubbles that I put that I get to fill out for this proficiency bonus. See all these bubbles? Well, why are there bubbles over here? Well, because the different classes are good intrinsically with these skills. So again, this is just listed in the book. I don't know this by heart. Page 66, up in the top left, it says, hey, choose 2 of these skills to be proficient in. So I get to choose. Now my list that I get to choose from is Arcana, Animal Handling. So I can either choose this. I can do Insight. I can do Medicine, Nature, Perception, Religion, and Survival. All right. So I get pretty role play-ish here. I like to do, when I'm choosing the skills that I'm proficient in, I like them to match what kind of character I'm playing. So I'm not going to just say, okay, well, I'm a druid, I'm animal handling. Because don't forget, the character that I'm playing is a druid who isn't really close to his druidic roots. So I do think that I probably would be naturally good with animals. I like that. So I'm thinking about animal handling. I do think that I want to be very perceptive. I think I want to be sort of like roguish and perceptive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick perception first. Now, again, this is what I'm proficient in, and I get to choose 2 of these. So my proficiency bonus is +2. So instead of a 3, I get to make this +5. Okay. Now, I still get to choose 1 more. So I don't think I'm going to do survival. I don't know if I want to do insight. Because I think there are a lot of really good choices here. I don't think it would be survival. I think insight's going to make the most sense because animal handling seems very druidic. I don't think he's going to be close to his magic as far as Arcana. The nature and the medicine, I don't think. So I'm going to choose insight. So again, I get to come up here and add this +2 to this +3. Boom. Now, wait a second. Remember this guy? Bottom right under my stars here. And I'm going to check this before I finish out the character. Anything under these stars, I'll go, oh yeah, got to do that. Skill versatility. This is from being a half elf. I get 2 additional skill proficiencies, right? So pretty baller. I think that I'm going to do, this is interesting. I'm making a character choice right now. This is going to be interesting. I hadn't decided this. And this is something that, as you're coming through and making your character, it's okay to have these epiphanies and explore. I think he's so far removed from the druidic side of things and nature and the healing essences that he is good with medicine. I think he's going to be good with medicine. I think he's going to be someone who's had to rely on just not having druidic power. In fact, I'm going to talk with Matt and see if in the town where he's serving, if he could be a field medic. Perhaps and it doesn't have to be the military, but like maybe for the militia or the town guard or something like that, just learning that sort of thing. So I'm going to be a little better with medicine, and that's just a character choice. With that said, I also think, I don't think animal handling because it doesn't spend a lot of time. I think I'm going to do survival because I like the idea, and I don't know if you've noticed this. Stormraven is my character's name. In the land of Aeronoth, where I'm going to be playing this character in Matt Click's Aeronoth game, the Stormraven Highlands are a very popular place. It's a well-known name. So I am from a very well-known clan. I think it's going to be one of those things where I'm good at this in spite of myself. I don't really like to, but I'm like, yeah, I'm good with it. Yeah, I can figure out where we are by looking at the sun. So survival, I'm going to take this, add it here, and 5. So there, now I can take this from the bottom right in my to-do pile and accidentally cut and paste it in the same spot. I can take it right here. Boom. So now I have one additional language. Now I'm going to wait on this. In fact, I might even talk to my game master, to my dungeon master, Matt, and ask him what language seems appropriate that I would know. And so I'm going to wait on that. So I'm going to leave that here unfinished. And that, again, remember, under these stars means that I haven't finished yet. All right, let's go back to the chat and see how we're doing. Everyone still with me? You guys still hanging out? Is there, Major Tom says, is there a reason you chose proficiency in all wisdom skills? Mostly because I want Kristoff to be really sharp and perceptive. I want him to be akin to a con man who hasn't flipped yet. So I feel like he's very intuitive. I think, what's up? Rob from Performance Check stopped in. He says, he's like early Doctor Strange, brilliant and begrudging. Just brilliant but begrudging, just stopping in to say hi. What's up, man? So the idea is that I want him to be highly sharp, perceptive, not really good at the druidic stuff, not really good at animal handling and that kind of stuff. And that's stuff that he's sort of sworn off as a person. Let's see here. So Stephen Back has a good comment here in the chat. It says, in my games, every reactionary ability check that is not linked to a skill, I made into a saving throw because it plays well. That's actually really good. Can you give me some examples in the chat, Stephen? I'd love to share that. Lumi Joe says, I try to use intelligence and charisma myself. The issue is that the designers couldn't figure out what they should be, so they rarely use them. Now, what are we going to do next? I have a ton of stuff that I need to fill out on this character sheet that is still my druid. So it's like, well, let me stop right there. I'm making a level 1, so it's actually going to be really short, filling in the druidic stuff. But I'm going to jump to something that's a little more intrinsically related to the character again, and that's the background. What the heck is a background? Backgrounds are another thing to hang on the coat rack to give you pluses, bonuses, and things like that. It's more mechanics that give you options to choose from so that not every player is good at every single thing. So on page 121, it's called Personality and Background, and it talks about all this stuff we skipped up here. Okay. So here's something I'm going to do. I'm going to fill in my race. So I'm half elf. Whoa. My alignment, I don't fill this in. I just like to have an idea of the character in my head and I play it. That's a whole nother video. But there's a section on alignment, and it's good, especially for starting players. If you don't really have an idea of the character in your mind, it can give you some guidelines. But I'm going to skip this section, and this isn't stuff you need to put on your character sheet. This isn't stuff you need to, but it talks about your personal characteristics, your personality traits, you know, how you act. That's what alignment is. Like, basically, it broadly describes your morality. It's kind of like linchpins of what you consider good and evil and stuff like that. Just to give you an example, I'll quickly read them. There's lawful good, neutral good, and chaotic good. Then there's lawful neutral, neutral, and chaotic neutral. Lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. Now, There are hundreds of videos on alignment. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but check it out. If you're into playing an alignment, go for it, man. So another thing is you see on the right-hand side, I'm going to screen share again. You're going to see that, and I hope you're not ticked at this because it's just the way that I do it. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws, right? That is all listed in your backgrounds. Okay, I'm going to change my mind. I'm not going to screen share because I want to show you what a background looks like. So in the book, okay, this particular background is on page 127. It's the Acolyte. Okay, now what is a background? The book describes it as it provides you with important story cues about your character's identity. The most important question to ask about your background is, what changed? Why did you stop doing whatever you were doing? So your background is who you were before you were an adventurer. I already know that. I worked that out with my game master, my dungeon master. So for me, I'm not going to have to look through these backgrounds and figure out who I used to be. I'm going to kind of look and say what matches the idea that I have in my head. Now, you could do that too. So here's an example on page 127, an Acolyte. So an Acolyte is going to give you, okay, what was your role before you became an adventurer as an Acolyte? So you spent your life in service of a temple, of a specific god or a pantheon of gods, and basically you act as an intermediary between the realm of the holy and the realm of the material world. That's what an Acolyte is. Now, the backgrounds come with some built-in cool stuff that I'm going to get to add to my character sheet. You get something called a feature. Now, features are sort of like role play flavor that you can throw in that allow you to have some, I would call them things in your back pocket tied to your past. It's like you used to be an Acolyte. So the feature in this, you command the respect of those who share your faith, and you can perform the religious ceremonies of your deity. So what does that do? Well, you and your adventuring companions can expect to receive free healing and care at a temple, a shrine, or another established presence of your faith, but you have to provide the material components for the spells. So basically, because you're a follower of the faith, the other followers of the faith are going to heal you for free. That is a cool story element that comes with your background. And it's like, hey, you know, before I was an adventurer, I was an Acolyte in this temple. I know some people. Let's stop by this place, and you know that's what we'll get our healing there. So I haven't chosen a background, but I know kind of what I think. Let's see here. Now, along with these backgrounds, it goes on to what I was showing before on the character sheet, which I'll share again. This is really good if you're building a character and you've never done this before. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws are really good ways to flesh out a character and give yourself something that you can kind of role play with right out of the box. So I'm going to read a couple of these for the Acolyte just so you can see some examples. So a personality trait for the Acolyte would be, I idolize a particular hero of my faith and constantly refer to that person's deeds and example. So that would be something that I could bring up. My ideals would be, say, tradition. The ancient traditions of worship and sacrifice must be preserved and upheld. So I'm a very traditional person. Those are my ideals. And that helps you in a role-playing situation when you have, let's say you stop by that local temple. Let's say you go there to get some healing done, and the priests aren't following the exact rules because they've gotten lazy. Well, now you as your character would probably feel compelled to do something about that. And that causes conflict, which is story, which can help a lot. Now, bonds are the things that you're tied to, the things you're linked to. So here's an example of one from the Acolyte. I would die to recover an ancient relic of my faith that was lost long ago. So your bond is like, listen, it belongs in a museum. You're thinking, no, this is that important to me. This is a bond that I have. And honestly, I'm not trying to drink any haterade, but that's kind of why I don't use these personally because these blur together to me, and I feel like I would have cut one of these personally or been a little more clear. So a lot of the bonds are good. A lot of the ideals are good, but some of them are milky and blend together. So here's a better bond that I like from the Acolyte. I would do anything to protect the temple where I served. That's more clear to me. So if there was a war and you were off and you were adventuring and you guys had just, oh, great, we're in the tavern, let's have some ale. Boom, boom, hankering for some ale. Bamski, you hear that there's a war and that in the path of the marching army is your old temple. You wouldn't think twice. This is the most important to you. You're like, listen, guys, I got to go. I got to go. And that would be a bond. That's why a bond would come into play. It gives the game master some really good roots in the story that they can draw from to give you some conflict and plot. Now, flaws are really good. It's basically the thing you're not great at. And it gives you one thing to focus on so that when you're role-playing in given situations, you can show that weakness, which is often really interesting. Success is fun, but failure is way more fun because it leads to bigger success. So here's a flaw. Here's an example of a flaw. I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. So I have an idea of who Christoph is. So I'm not going to fill these out. That's what I thought was going to be frustrating everybody if they were like, oh, come on, man, you're not going to fill them out? Fill out the character sheet. For me, I have an idea of who my character is, and I'm leaving some of these a little more nebulous on purpose because I want to see how the session 1 develops. So these things, for now, I'm not going to worry about. But I'm putting this here just to know that I already did something there on the character sheet and don't have to worry about them. Now, the rest of this background is the cool role-play-y kind of stuff that we talked about. This would go under features and traits, okay? Now, there are a lot here. I think for the sake of ease, and I might change it as we go through, but I think for the sake of ease, let's see. This is super not going to help. I might actually make one of my own and see if Matt will let me make one. But there are rules in the book as to how to make your own background as well. That's probably not helping you now. You're like, Tim, stay on task. Stop homebrewing on the stream. That's what the game's all about, man. Just making it your own. The book suggests that I go with the hermit background. I don't think that goes with what I want to do. I'm going to go to the chat. Everyone in the chat, what do you think? What background should I take? Chris says, I have to watch it after this one. I've heard great things. He's talking about, I think, performance checks. Awesome Lore Keepers game. Chris says, can we get at least one of his personality traits? Any weird quirks? Man, here's the thing. They're a blob of jelly in my head right now. I don't know exactly. I know I have a baseline idea of how I want to play Christoph, but until the moment the game starts, I usually am like, and I feel it out like in the moment. What I say, what I do. Durgan did not have, I'm going to open these blinds. Durgan did not have, I'm going to turn off the camera for just a second because I don't want to blind you all, but I'm opening these blinds behind me and flipping them. Anyway, what I was saying is Durgan didn't have a Scottish accent. I was going to chicken out on that. And, well, no, I was trying to do a different play on a dwarf. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do the Scottish accent. And then when I started to talk, boom, it came out. So I was like, ugh. So let me think. I'm going to throw you one, Chris, because I agree with what you're saying. So here, let's go to the character sheet. I'm not going to click on it, but I'm just going to say. So a personality trait is Christoph. Or no, I'll say I. I believe that I am generous, but I'm actually selfish and don't realize it. That is how I'm going to go with this character. This character is going to be young and impetuous to a degree. Think he has the world figured out. So I believe I'm doing people a favor, and I feel like I want to play him as though I hand out advice and actions and favors that aren't asked for and are maybe a little nearsighted. That might change, but I agree with what you're saying. And I think to fill out the character sheet, I should definitely do that. So let's see here. Does anyone have a suggested background for me to fill in just for the sake of the character sheet? So let's see here. Use Urban Hunter from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Okay, I can try that. I have not. I don't own that book, but I can check it out. I know Marquise does. Maybe I can ask him to help me out with that. Dwarov says use Matt's random table. Which one? I'd be happy to use that. Drop Dice says it's different for a druid and makes him more urban. Oh, I like that. Urban bounty hunter. I actually like that a lot. I'm going to look into that. I haven't bought Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. I did. I flipped through a hardback in a Barnes & Noble, and it was way more. It wasn't what I was expecting. It's my fault. My expectations were wrong. It's an adventurer's guide. It's a really good one. But I thought it was going to be a campaign book. And so that's on me. If you're a Storm Raven, I would say something like Noble. See, that's the thing. The Storm Ravens aren't nobles, though. They're druids that live in the mountains. And Chad says, yeah, I know you don't want to give away too much because we're going to be watching tomorrow. Not only that, it's because I make it up as I go along, I think. So Mole Kaiser asks, is Kristoff in his early 20s? So this brings up another good point, and I'll screen share for just a second. Much to the chagrin of many, when it comes to age and stuff like that, I usually don't decide exactly. So I love that he asked that question. Is he in his early 20s? Kristoff is in his mid-20s. So he knows just enough to be dangerous. Now, here's the other thing. All the races in Dungeons & Dragons have different maturity cycles and different life cycles and lifespans. So a dwarf that's 50 is much younger than a human that's 50. So I'll say he's the half-elven equivalent of mid-20s. His maturity level will be mid-20s, absolutely, for sure. So background, I think for now, because I am going to probably look at the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, I think the closest thing to that would be the soldier, especially because I'm going to maybe do a field medic or something like that. So this is an interesting fact. You want to hear an interesting fact? The background I chose for Durgan, I never switched it, but it never fit the character, and I never used his feature. I never used his roleplay element. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to choose Soldier. Soldier's on page 140. What are we thinking, chat? Feature, ear to the ground. Oh, I see. Chris is telling me from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide in the chat what I'm looking at. I love this. Okay, perfect. So I'm actually screen sharing the chat so I can see this. So here's what I'm going to do, just to make this super easy. I'm going to copy and paste this. Thanks for taking the time to type all that out, man. So, oh yeah, this is great. So essentially, this is another point. You're like, Tim, what are you doing? You're going off the rails. You're using something that's not in the book. There are a ton of homebrewed options out there that are backgrounds. If you're starting off, I would say this. Stay away from homebrewed classes. Be wary of homebrew races. Yeah, just kind of do your homework. Homebrew backgrounds, as long as they're following the reasonable guides in the book and apples to apples, they look similar, I'm fine with that. But if you're just starting out, I would avoid any homebrew stuff because a lot of it isn't play tested or it's spun to a certain group style or flavor. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Ooh, let's see here. Gavin Walter says, I think you should just go with Hermit. That's the thing, though. He's sort of a busybody. He's sort of a person about town, like trying to rub elbows and get away from the druid life. All right, so here's the feature, ear to the ground. I like this. So hold on. So maybe I'm making a character change here. Maybe I'm kind of liking this. Maybe I'm not a medic. Oh, here's what it is. Christoph was hired on as a low-level bounty hunter, but he knows that there's not enough field medics. So he's studying to be a field medic to try to fill the void because he knows that he doesn't feel his druidic roots. So he's not a good medic. He's okay, but he's not the best. He knows the knowledge. But I think that'll be an interesting transition going from wanting to try to fill the void and, yeah, no, I'm going to school to be a doctor. Yeah, I'm a bounty hunter now, and I'm pretty good at it, which also matches all those perception and insight, wisdom skills. And then as he slowly gets more and more into the druidic side of things, how does that work? Because that would be awesome to have like a level 10 druid bounty hunter who now, instead of hunting bounties for the people of the, the city, is sort of this urban, like using druidic magic and nature to hunt people down, more like a ranger. I think that's kind of cool. Let's jump back to the chat here. Oh, and Chad makes a good point. He's talking about in the, because I said no to the background. He mentioned trying a noble. And I said, well, no, they're druids in the mountains. And he said, well, yeah, but if they're a prominent clan, that would make him more of a noble perspective. And that's really true. Nobles on page 135. The thing is, in the book, mechanically, specifically the way the background's written, is it says that nobles understand wealth, power, and privilege. And so it's about history. And I could reskin it totally. This is more bent on, to me, position and privilege, which could work. And that's actually really clever. And let me tell you, Chad, you're really good at reskinning stuff to get to a cool place with a character. So maybe I should take your advice, man. So Chris gave me this Sword Coast Legends version right here of the information that I can use for my background. And I'll fill that out in a second. But he made a good point in the chat. And he said that, let's see. Remember, if you get the same skill twice or a tool, you get to pick a new one of your choice. So as we're hanging these things on our coat rack, as we were talking about, as I hang this, the class and the background and all this stuff, if anything overlaps, like what he's saying, if you get the same skill twice that you can get a proficiency in or that you add, that you can pick from, or if you get the same tools twice, you get to pick a new one. That's pretty rad. Gavin says, I think, Tim, you'll look at this later and be like, nope, I'm a fighter. That's funny. What's up? I think it's Lion Max. It's L10N Max. Lion Max, I'm back. How's it going? Just posted my character in the Facebook group. Oh, radical. Yeah, I'm talking about backgrounds. So I'm going to take, and again, I don't want anybody to get nervous. Okay, if you're watching this video and you're like, wait, oh, he's going off book. This section on backgrounds that tells me what I can use and the skill proficiencies and the tools and all that stuff, that's what I'm using. I just had a buddy take and cut and paste something he typed out from another book that I don't know. And so, oh, someone's in here giving out free Steam keys. What? Missed that. So that is what I'm doing. So if you're like, hold on, where's this? What is this Word document? Where are you getting this from? Well, it's the same similar information. Like if I were going to use the Hermit background on page 134, Chris Wilhelm was a bro, and he popped it into the chat for me. So, Steven, it's Monster Energy time. You know what? This is not a break. This is not a break. Everyone just stay right where you are. You just hang out right there. I'm going to get my monster. That's actually a really good point. Hold on. Don't leave. Here I come. I'll be back in a second. Here I come. All right. Oh, buddy. I'm rocking a peach tea. Straight from my grandmama's kitchen. Not really. One grandma has passed away, and the other one would not be caught dead in the kitchen. So let's go to the chat. In my 20 years of life, I've not had a monster. Listen, man, some would argue you're not missing out on anything because you don't need it. Others would argue that you're missing out on a whole world in a can. So I'm gonna crack up. Woo, this is real cold too, boy. Let me tell you. So I will say this: is it Molkaiser? The monster rehabs that I like to drink are non-carbonated and they're tea. So it's like different flavors of sweet tea mixed with other stuff. So this is peach tea and it's delicious. All right. I keep wanting to call you Moloch the Mystic, Molkaiser. All right, so we're continuing to make this character. I'm going to fill in my background right now. I'm going to screen share. Now, this information, remember, I just got this from Chris in the chat. So I get more skill proficiencies. Choose 2 from Deception, Insight, Persuasion, or Stealth. So choose 2. Deception, Insight, Persuasion, or Stealth. I think I'm going to go Deception. Now remember, this is a proficiency I'm adding. So this is +2. And I think we're going to go Persuasion. Because I don't think I'm a stealthy guy, but I think I want to try to talk people into things. Now, this is from my background. I tend to keep track of this stuff so that I remember when I look later. You don't have to keep this on here. I'm just going to copy or cut and paste it here so that I know that I got this from my background. So that when later on, when the game master's like, whoa, hold on, how do you have so many skill proficiencies? I'm like, oh, well, my background gave me this. You know, that kind of. All right. So I did this. Hey, buddy. So let's see here. Now I get to choose tool proficiencies. Choose 2 from among these types: a gaming set, a musical instrument, and thieves' tools. I think I'm going to go thieves' tools. Because I think I try to, you know, I'll try to sneak in someone's house and wait for him if I'm trying to catch him. So I've got my features and traits, equipment, other proficiencies. So I want to take and say, okay, I have thieves' tools. Now, I can put a set of thieves' tools here because you might be thinking, wait, you get thieves' tools, wouldn't you put them in equipment? This is different because this means I can use thieves' tools. Remember, we're talking about proficiencies at this point. So for me, this means I'm proficient in thieves' tools. So now I want to make sure that I don't confuse myself. I already had this, already had this, already had this. So let's go back. All right, I get equipment, a set of clothes appropriate to my duties, and a pouch containing 20 gold pieces. That's kind of cool because I want to have, yeah, that actually, whoa, calculadora. A wild calculator appears. Now, remember, anything below the stars just means I'm just moving it to the character sheet so that I can put it where it belongs. I haven't saved in a while. A set of clothes appropriate to my duties and a pouch containing 20 gold pieces. This would go under the equipment section. So this is where I'm going to put all my stuff that I have. See, copper piece is CP, silver piece, electrum piece, gold piece, and platinum piece. So that's the denominations of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and put it in my equipment. Because that is not a proficiency. That's the equipment that I get. So I have a set of clothes appropriate to my duties. And I get me a pouch. Save. All right. Now, this feature, you're in frequent contact with people in the segment of society that your chosen quarries move through. These people might be associated with the criminal underworld, the rough and tumble folk of the streets, or members of high society. This connection comes in the form of contact in any city you visit, a person who provides information about the people and places of the local area. So I like that. So I'm going to grab this feature. It's called Ear to the Ground. I'm going to copy this. And over here, another feature and trait I have. So I already know that I'm going to put it here. I don't have to paste it down here to, disseminate it to the other parts of the sheet. I know that it's a feature. So I'm just going to put it right here. Now, that takes up a lot of space. Here's hoping that this starts to slowly shrink as I fill it up. It should auto shrink. We shall see. So I'm going to hit save. Now, because this is so much flavor and is really open to role play and interpretation, this ear to the ground, for now, I'm going to leave that whole description in there. For a lot of stuff, I wouldn't. Right? We notice up here I abbreviated everything. But because this is like, if I say, hey, DM, I want to use ear to the ground, he's not going to know what that is. If I say, hey, DM, I want to use Fey Ancestry, he'll probably go, oh, what is that? And I go, oh, well, I just can't be charmed or I can't be put to sleep. Or, I have advantage on saves against being charmed. Ear to the ground is a lot more open to interpretation on purpose. It's designed to be a narrative feature. Okay, it's like a flavor feature. So that's what a lot of the backgrounds provide. The reason why this is cool is because for now, if I'm like, hey, I want to use ear to the ground, and the DM goes, what is that? I can read through this and give him some of the flavor text because it's going to inform his decision better as to whether or not I can use it and how. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's my personal preference. The more familiar that I get with it and the more familiar that he gets with it in the campaign, I'm much more likely to truncate that or, abbreviate it. So, all right. So let's come back here and cross this off so that I know I'm done. Awesome. Let me come back here and save it. All right, I already saved. Perfect. All right, let's go back to the chat. Oh, Chris makes a really good point. He says he would have put the thieves tools in the box labeled other proficiencies. So that is exactly where it belongs, not in the features. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me show you what he's talking about. And this is exactly this is what I mean. I don't make a character as often as I play a character. So it's one of those things where you get more and more, I think you get more and more familiar with it as you do it, but it's one of those that I have to refamiliarize myself with the process every time. Yeah, so I think, let me show you the screen here. Foist. All right. So what he's talking about is on the character sheet. Down here it says other proficiencies and languages. Well, this is an other proficiency. It's not a feature. Okay? So specifically, I'm going to take this out and put it right down here. That's a very good point, Chris. Good catch, man. You know what else? I think this would be an other proficiency as well. So that if I'm like, oh, where did I get those proficiencies from? Well, I got them from my background. All right. And again, it doesn't matter, really. This is more accurate to me. But if you can find it here, then put it there. But this is probably the right place. But fill out your character sheet the way that you and your game master will understand it. That's really the key. It's just a reference point. It's taking all those rules from the book, all the stuff that we've been working through and running through, and it's making it so that you have a hot sheet to go, all right, I'm telling a story, and I need to use the rules. Boom, quick reference. That's really what it is. All right. So I know I need to do languages. It says, oh, he's saying the languages. I am super messing up. Oh, no, I didn't do that. I did. Okay, sorry. I purposefully didn't do the languages yet. Nope, he's right. Yep, nope. JC Limpel, you're smart. You were smarter than me. That should go in other proficiencies as well. So here, hold on. Why is this guy doing a stream on building a character when he doesn't know where these things go? Because I wanted to show you that you don't need to know. Like, I knew going in. I was like, I'm not doing any homework. I make a character once in a while. The last time I made a character was for Rob Coletta's Lore Keepers game on Performance Check. And I went through this whole process. Just kind of, okay, do this real quick. And I would bet you $5 double dollars from Trigun that I have everything in this box. But he's right. I need to put my other languages here because it says languages right here. Now I'm going to leave this here until I choose it, and then I'll put it here. All right, so let's save it and hop back to the chat where everyone can tell me what else I missed. What's up, Violet? I rarely ever play, he says, and I haven't played 5e yet, only DM'd, but I'm always making characters and helping my players make theirs. Excellent point. When you and you're both, basically both you and your GM, that's all who needs to understand these character sheets, man. You can write them in shorthand if you want. Did you know Dwarf and Orc are written characters are the same? Ooh, that's cool. Did not know that, actually. So, I think there's one other major thing that we need to do here, because we filled out a lot of this character sheet. Okay, we've really kind of gone around the whole thing and talked about, well, the skills, the abilities, all that stuff. But now we're going to talk about some of the things that are going to factor in to combat and my abilities as my actual class a little deeper. So I have all of my abilities. I've got my skills. I've got my proficiencies pretty well handled. I know all that stuff, but I still am not a druid, right? Think about it. There's really nothing on here that is druidic. It says I'm druid up here, but I haven't really added any of that class stuff yet. So we're going to flip back to that so that I can fill out that part of it. Now, remember, we're back on page 64, okay? So I am a druid, and as I work through under class features on page 65, okay, I'll show you real quick. Remember, we're on this page here, okay? So under class features, it's going to give me a list of things. It's that easy. I'm going to take this list of things, and I'm going to put them on the character sheet. Because remember, the rules are in the book here. I don't need to memorize this stuff, but I'm going to take them from here. I'm going to put it on my druid character sheet. So I kind of wanted to show you that. Because a lot of times in how-to videos, I'll be like, well, where are they getting that? I get that a 10 goes there, but where'd you get the 10? So understanding that I'm just literally going off this list on page 65, then I think that'll be more clear for everybody. All right. So the first thing I need to figure out is hit points. All right. So there's a few things relating to hit points here. There's current hit points, hit point maximum. There's temporary hit points, total, hit dice, all this stuff. I'm just going to go down the list because all of that stuff matters, but it's all anchored in this. Hit dice. Think of it this way. We talked about all the different dice in our D&D Basics videos. There's a D4 all the way up to a D20. The hit dice is the number of die I get to roll when I'm leveling up to see how healthy and strong I am, to see how many hit points I get. So a hit dice for a druid is called a D8. So I get 1 D8 per druid level. Okay? So what do I put here? Well, it's a D8 or a die 8, and I get one of them. So 1 D8. Lowercase, number 1 D8, no spaces. 1 D8. That's my hit die. Okay. Now that comes into play when I take rests and I get hit points back and stuff like that. Okay. Now my personal total hit die, because if I get one of these every time I level, I've got to keep track of that. So up here, well, I just get the 1 right now because I'm level 1. So I get one of those every time I level. So I have a total of 1 D8 hit dice. Okay. Now how many hit points do I have? If this is my hit dice, well, that's confusing. I get 1d8 hit points. How does this work? Well, kind of. So at first level, I get 8 plus my Constitution modifier. Why? That's just how it is. That's the rule. So that's not like, it's just the Constitution is tied into your health. So usually with healing spells and different things like that, this bonus is going to come into play if there's a bonus most of the time. So I get hit points at first level. I get 8 plus my Constitution modifier. Okay, so if I get 8, why does it say a dice? Why not just say 8? Well, there are a lot of times where you're going to have to roll this. There are a lot of times where you have to roll a d8. Okay, in this case, when I start out, I get to take the maximum 8, and then I get to add my Constitution modifier. Now, in this case, it's 2. Okay, so I get 8 from the book. My Constitution modifier is 2. So I start with 10 hit points. Okay. Now, for like later on, there's more that you have to kind of add into it. Temporary hit points is where I keep track of if I take damage. So if something hits me and it's like, oh, you take 5 hit points of damage, well, I know I have 5 left. So I keep track. This is my, for me, and I know this might be confusing to people, I typically keep track of temporary hit points down here when I take damage. Now that's confusing to new players because there are things that come into play in the game that give you temporary hit points, like certain barbarian skills or certain spells. So to a lot of people, that's confusing. Temporary hit points is circumstantial things that would allow you to have hit points outside of this normal pool. So, oh, there's a magic spell that gives you 5 temporary hit points. Well, I know that I have this pool first. So if I get hit by an attack, I can take this 5, the same attack, I just take this and make it 0, and my regular hit point pool doesn't get hurt. So I'm sorry for confusing anyone who's newer, but there's not a lot of times where temporary hit points come into play for me. So that's where I personally just keep track of how many points I have so that I know what my maximum is. As I level, let's say later on in levels, if this number was a 25, so that, because I don't have this anywhere else, I don't have that information anywhere else, especially if I have to roll this die every time I level to get these points. So for me, if I get hit for 5 points, I'm just going to put a 20 under there. It works because then if it's like, oh, you get a spell that gives you 5 temporary hit points, I just go like this. Is that confusing to you? Maybe. For me, then I'm just like, oh, my temporary hit points? All right. I just keep track of it right in there. So that's how I do it personally. But maybe that's dumb to you. So tell me how you do it. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to talk about the different proficiencies that I have. This is kind of down here with what Chris was saying before. There's other proficiencies. This is where we go into the armor and the weapons and the equipment and stuff like that I use. But first I want to visit the chat to see what I missed. Let's see here. Stephen Back says, I never use my sheet for hit points. I typically fold graph paper in half and track hit points, gold, potions, and ammo. Awesome. Normally I do too. I got to tell you, this is the first time I'm using an all digital character sheet. But let me tell you why I'm using an all digital character sheet. There have been times where I have seen other people not able to find their character sheets. I had a scare where I couldn't find my Quintrek Coppermist character sheet from the Winds of Sorceline. So I thought, you know what? Provoker Season 2, there's nothing more difficult to try to focus and not be frazzled when you can't find your character sheet. So for me, I'm going all digital, and I'm going to try to use this. That's the digital method I came up with. Drawoff also says, oh, well, let me jump up. Chad says, I want to know your flaws, your bonds, the things that make Christoph Christoph. You will through the game. Sorry, buddy. Yep, because I don't know those things, and I don't know how strong they are. I play heavily off of the game master and decide how I respond and different things. Like even through this character creation, I went from being a field medic to a bounty hunter who wants to be a field medic. Like that's how it is when I'm playing live, is I kind of get this idea. And by about 3 sessions in, then I know, and then I could probably talk to you about it. Oh, a couple of people are making a really good point. So when I roll for hit die, we were talking about that hit die and that plus. The constitution score that we've been talking about factors into how healthy you are. So right here, this constitution score, this +2, in hit die, I should put that here because then when I roll my hit dice, I'm going to get the appropriate amount. So that is actually a really good catch from the chat. So it's 1d8 plus 2 whenever I have to roll my hit dice. Hit dice are typically rolled when you take a rest so that you can get hit points back. It's a way to also in the game, you know that a character with an 8 is weaker than a character with a 12 because their hit point pool is bigger. So when you hear, how many hit dice is that creature? It's sort of a Dungeon Master mechanic-y kind of way to say, how strong is it and how many hit points does it have? Save that. So now we're going to talk about equipment. And this is really where, on page 65, in fact, I'm going to stop screen sharing here because I don't know that I'll tell you how to do this, but I don't think I'm going to bore you with going through all these little details because this is really just shopping. This is where you pick equipment and stuff. You have proficiencies in what kind of armor and weapons you can use and what kind of tools you have. I don't put these on my character sheet usually, but I probably should because it keeps you from maybe using stuff you can't use and stuff. So every character class is restricted to the kinds of weapons and armor that they use for the balance of the overall mechanics of the game. In this case, the proficiencies, the druid, I can use light armor or medium armor and shields. Now, here's why it's important, and this is why I think I should put this on the character sheet. For a druid, I can't wear armor or shields that are made of metal. It's like, what? What are you talking about? That is part of the druidic way. They don't use metal. And so that's important to know. So here on my proficiencies, and again, I'm just copying this right out of the book. And so this is a little bit of bookkeeping. This is a little bit of tax form. So armor, I'm going to do light, medium, shields, no metal. And then the same thing for to know what kind of weapons I use. I can use, and again, this is kind of the boring bookkeeping part. I can use clubs because I go up in the club. I can use daggers, darts. You know what? I'm not going to do all this. Honestly, if I found a weapon, I'd check the book. I'm not going to do all that. To me, I'll do the armor because that specifically is something I might forget. I've never played a druid before. But again, that shows you, like, for me, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to go through and write every weapon I could possibly have. I'm going to use the book on page 65 that shows that list of weapons. And when I'm selecting my weapon, I'm going to go ahead and probably say, okay, I have this. And then I'll put it in this equipment here. Okay. But I'm not going to do that. So I do, in that same section, I get a certain toolkit. Okay. So in my proficiencies, my other proficiencies, it says that I am proficient with the herbalism toolkit. Now I am just going to put this up here under my thieves tools so that my kits are up front. So it is important to know what kind of weapons you can use, but I would use that. Like I said, I don't want to gloss over that, but I'm not going to write all that on my character sheet because for me, I'm going to be looking through that and it'll be confusing. So what I'll probably do is, let's say for the sake of it that I chose to use a scimitar. I would write on here scimitar. And then over here in my equipment, I'd put scimitar. This is probably driving some people crazy. And this, arguably, there are wrong ways to do things. I've done a couple of things wrong already. But the good news is, as long as you have the right information or you work with your game master, at the end of the day, it's not gonna make or break your game. So there's one other thing on page 65 as I'm on my class features. It's my druid. What do I get to do? And it's like, this is where the actual druidic kind of thing comes into play, where I get to choose who I am as a class and so on. So I've talked about hit points. We talked about proficiencies. We talked about, the kind of things that you can use. I'm going to lightly touch on equipment. There are starting equipment guidelines in the book to tell you, okay, you're at character level 1, you'd probably have something like this. Okay? So for this is on page 66. It's the top here, and it's just equipment. And this says, you start with the following equipment in addition to the equipment granted by your background. Now, I didn't do the equipment for my background either. Yes, I did. However, this is the starting equipment. I can use a wooden shield or a simple weapon. Hopefully it's not too frustrating, but I'm not going to choose that stuff because, again, that's more of the shopping element. That's literally looking at a page in the book and picking what weapons you have. So to me, this is more about the character creation, not the sword or anything that the character uses. Though that stuff is important, it's much more about just picking from a list, and I don't think that that's difficult. So I'm not going to go into that because I also haven't chosen what weapon I want Christoph to use. But the final thing we're going to do to kind of wrap up here is we're going to talk about our druidic abilities. Then we're going to fill out armor class and we'll fill out initiative. And I think that'll be enough for me to do a session 1. So my druidic abilities, if you remember, I go back here to page 65. And there's a long whole list of what I get and all the stuff I get. So on level 1, it says I get these features. I get druidic and spell casting. So what does that mean? Well, in the following section on page 66, it tells me exactly what druidic is. It tells me exactly the kind of spell casting I get. Okay. Now this gets a lot more in depth, gets a lot more detailed. So, and we're going on like 2.5 hours. This is like the length of a session. It normally doesn't take this long to make a character, but it takes this long to teach how to make a character. So, my druidic is going to be, druidic, the secret language of the druids. You can speak the language and use it to leave hidden messages. You and others who know this language automatically spot such a message. Others spot the message's presence with the successful DC Wisdom 15 perception check. But they can't decipher it without magic. So, where do I put that on my character sheet? That's part of me being a level 1 druid is I get druidic. It's sort of this additional secret language. Well, down here, I can put it with features and traits, or I can put it with other proficiencies and languages. Okay? For me, that is more of a feature and a trait. To me, that's more of a feature. I think I could put it over here in other languages, but that's not a language that anyone can learn or use. So for me, I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and put it under here, under my features. So I'm going to say druidic, hidden druid language. Others can spot DC 15. Can't read without magic. Oh, you see the text shrink? Woohoo, it's working. Hidden druid language, other druids can spot. And I'll say outsiders spot on a DC 15. Can't read without magic. The druidic, hidden druid language, others can spot automatically. Outsiders spot on a DC 15, but can't read without magic. So that's how I put druidic in there. Now, the next thing on let me check the chat here. Everybody's helping me stay on track. Let's see here. Okay, so they're talking about druidic magic and how the metal affects it and how it might be an interesting character choice choosing to take disadvantage on casting druid spells. I will say this. I'll reveal this much. I'll probably do that for the first level or 2. Christoph is going to have metal armor, at least at first. So that's interesting. Major Tom says, I always thought the aversion to magic was similar to a vegan choosing not to eat meat. So the next thing I'm going to get to do is spell casting. Okay. Now, spell casting is in this section right here of the book. Now, the way that spell casting works is I draw from nature itself. That's how druids cast magic. That's how they use spells. I learn cantrips and I prepare and cast spells. Now, this goes deeper into learning the rules about casting spells. I'm not going to go into all that right now. But I will say, because I can cast spells, I get the feature called spell casting. And I'm going to put that under my features. Now, there's a lot of rules about how to cast spells and all that stuff. This is about character creation, so this isn't going to go too in depth on where these numbers are coming from and all that, aside from the book and how they work and cantrips and spells per level and all that stuff. But know that as a druid, I get to use spells. So spell casting is a proper ability in the book. That's what they call it. And what I'm going to be able to do here is that I get 2 cantrips, which are like super easy on-command spells. And then it tells me that I get a number of spells equal to the table. Remember that long table in the Druid section we're talking about? One of the sections tells me how many spells I can cast. That's this whole side over here. And it's just a table. How many do you get? How many? And again, there are a lot of deep rules about spell casting, all that stuff. That's not what this is about. This is just about making the character who can cast the spells. So I come across here. I know 2 cantrips and 2 level 1 spells. That's just what the table tells me. So on my character sheet, so that I can remember that, I'm going to come over here and put 2 cantrips, 1 first level. Well, why did I just put this? This isn't going to help me. Well, the second page of this character sheet. Oh, actually, this is where all the traits are. The third page are the spells. So if I'm like, hey there, that's a cantrip. That is where I would put that. Now, I'm not going to choose my cantrips on this stream. I'm not going to choose my spells because, again, that's a whole nother thing. I'll probably do another stream kind of adding in additional stuff. So I know that I get spell casting, and I know that I need to put attacks here for my spell casting, okay? So to attack, now this is all just straight from the book. How do my spells work? Well, I have a spell attack, which is my proficiency bonus. So for me, my spell attack is my proficiency bonus plus my wisdom modifier. So my spell attack bonus is +5. What does that mean? That means when I cast a spell and I roll that D20 and the DM says, all right, roll. And I go, all right, I cast, such and such magic roots. I roll a 5, I get to add a 5. Okay? So I'm going to put spell attack mod. Now you can also put it up here if you want. But I'm just doing my spell attack mod right there. It's +5. Okay? So that is as deep as I'm going to go into the magic. I need to pick my spells, and this is what I'll attack with as far as my spells. I also have a spell save DC. Now, a spell save DC means if I attack someone else, and a lot of this is on this page where the magic is. So, oops. What is my spellcasting ability is wisdom. My spell save DC is a similar formula. Now, this is all right from the book, page 66. My spell DC is 8 plus my proficiency bonus plus my wisdom modifier. So it's very similar to the spell attack, except I add 8 in there. Okay. So for me, if I'm saying, okay, it's 8, mine is total of 13 because I add the 8 and the 5. Okay. That is my spell save DC. That's pretty much it for the spell casting. Now, there are 2 final things we'll do to really round out the character sheet. I want to visit the chat one final time here. Let's see here. Explain the feat that you choose. Is that from the player's handbook? Sorry, I just dropped in from watching part 2 of your inspiration videos. Great stuff. Thanks to Novice DM. I didn't add a feat. That's actually my feature from my background. He's talking about Ear to the Ground. That is actually not a feat. That's from my background. I'm a bounty hunter from the Sword Coast Adventurers Guidebook from Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, buddy. Let's see here. Now I'm curious. How do y'all see the magic for a wizard working out? Oh, okay, magic questions. I'll leave that to the smart people in the chat. So two final things to round out the character sheet, and then we're going to wrap up because we have amazing people watching us. It's been like 2.5 hours. So I'm going to share the screen here, and there are 2 final things that we need to look up. Well, actually, hold on. So there's initiative and armor class. Now, armor is what you actually go and purchase, and there is on the equipment list in the book. It's dictated essentially by how quickly you can move and what you can use to basically, I'll put it this way. Armor class is a number that represents how difficult you are to hit, whether that's through actual hardened skin, armor itself, or moving quickly, that kind of thing. So armor is going to be, something that I'm going to buy from the equipment list, and I'll do that very briefly, but that is how all that factors in. But we're going to talk about initiative. Initiative is a really popular term in D&D. It's very commonly, you say, roll initiative. That means, hey, y'all, we're about to fight. So the way that you figure out how to use initiative, or not how to use it, but what it is basically how quick you get to act in that round, and it's coupled with some of your abilities. So people who are quicker get to act first. So if I'm not mistaken, it's in the 170s. Let me see here. So your initiative is literally just your dexterity, basically. It's a dexterity check, but it combines, like I said, there are different things that might slow down your initiative. There are different feats or abilities that might add to your initiative. But overall, what you're going to do is take and add the initiative is going to say, hey, okay, +1. My dexterity modifier is +1. So to my initiative, I get a +1. That's it. It's that easy. So for Christoph, I get to roll. And if it's a fight, I go, all right, I rolled a 3 +1. So my initiative is 4. Anyone who rolls higher than me gets to go before me. Anyone who rolls lower than me gets to go after me. Now, depending on the armor that you wear, you might add some or all of your dexterity modifier to your armor class. Again, some classes, and this would be in chapter 5. They really go into armor, and for the druid, kind of figuring out exactly, what armor I'm going to wear. I've never really played a druid, so I know that I can't for sure wear like split mail or chain mail or any of that. Well, split mail maybe. But I know that I can't wear metal. That's the main thing. So one of the things that I want to do is very quickly just go to the equipment section in the book and take you through a very basic selection of some armor so that we can at least fill out that part on the character sheet. Okay. So it's just flipping through it here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Really, I just want to appreciate, I just want to show my appreciation, because y'all have been watching for a long time, and hopefully this has been helpful. Like I said, I knew that I was going to fumble through parts of it, but I wanted to do that on purpose because I wanted it to be very clear that it's about just looking up things in the book, figuring it out, and making it happen, and fixing things as you go along. It doesn't need to be perfect. So I'm on page 145. I know that I'm proficient down here. I put in here, I can wear light and medium armor and use shields. So on this chart, on this table here, down here at the bottom right, page 145, looking through here, there's light armor, medium armor. So what I'm probably going to do is to start, I'm going to start with scale mail. Nothing crazy, nothing great. Now I'm going to start with metal, like I said, as a role play element. So on this chart, it literally just tells you what to add, and it gives you. So for me, I'm a scale mail. it's 14 plus my dexterity modifier with a maximum of 2. So my dexterity modifier plus that 14 is how I'm going to get my armor class. So here, I'm up here to armor class. My dexterity modifier is +1. My armor is scale mail. That's a 14. So I get a 15 armor. Now, if I were to use a shield, I couldn't do that because it says I can. I get a +2 to my armor because down here it says I can use shields. So, and that's just a static in the book, page 145. It says, hey, use a shield, you get +2. So what I'll do is I'll put in here +2, or, which is easier, 17, meaning if I'm holding a shield, it's a 17. If I'm not, it's a 15. And unless I missed anything huge and glaring, I think that's where we're going to call it. Did I miss anything else? How's everybody doing in the chat? I think I got to go here pretty quick because I just heard my daughter waking up. But thank you all for watching. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of people watching. Check out the Provokers Season 2 tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. on a Fistful of Dice. This has been me creating my character for the Provokers. This is Christoph Stormraven, and this is what I'm going to go with. So what you're looking at here, boom, we filled in all this together. If you have questions, post them below. I'm sure there are things I jumped around on or got spotty with or whatever, but look, it's progress over perfection. If you have questions, post them in the comments. Check out our D&D beginner series. If you are new to the game and you're like, what are you talking about? This is all crazy. All that stuff is right in there as well. There's plenty of beginner information. There are 2 videos in the series you can jump in on. I am really excited about tomorrow. Thank you all for subscribing. Thank you for commenting, for hanging out, for just being awesome, for helping me catch all my missed mistakes. I'll check the chat one final time here. Awesome, guys. Yeah, Doomguard. I went for like 3 hours, man. I almost did. Oh, Chad's asking me if I have character art for mine yet. I have chosen character art, but I haven't put it onto the overlay yet, so I haven't posted it. But I do have a character image. Yep. So thanks, everybody. It's been amazing. I'm going to end the stream here. Catch you guys tomorrow. You know, we're going to have a lot of cool stuff. If you're checking out Tabletop Terrors before Provokers, if you're looking for stuff to do, we're going to be interviewing the Order of the Amber Die professional role players, which is really cool. I cannot wait to dig into that. We will be doing our offhand attack from James's car tomorrow at 3-ish, 2:45-ish maybe. So yeah, join us then, and then we'll jump into the Provokers at 7:30 on a Fistful of Dice's channel. So it has been amazing. You are all amazing. And until next time, may your dice roll high. I don't know why I did that. I don't know.